They said the village was cursed. But he went anyway. Stay with me, because this story is about a man who entered a place where no one dared to go, and found not only the truth, but someone worth saving. My name is Daniel, and I never believed in curses. Yet when whispers spread of a village deep in the valley where people vanished without a trace, something inside me refused to let it go. The roads were abandoned, the houses left to rot, but every few months a traveler, a farmer, even a wandering merchant would simply disappear. No bodies. No signs. Just silence. I carried only a lantern, a knife, and the weight of my stubbornness when I set foot beyond the crooked gate. The air was heavy, the stillness unnatural, no birds, no wind, only the sound of my boots crunching against broken stones. The deeper I walked, the more I felt as though unseen eyes followed me from the shadows of empty homes. Then I heard it, faint, fragile, almost drowned by the silence. A cry. A woman's voice, trembling with desperation. My grip tightened on the lantern as I followed the sound through narrow alleys, past doors hanging loose on rusted hinges, until I reached a half-collapsed house. Inside, bound and terrified, was a woman whose eyes widened the moment she saw me. Her voice cracked as she whispered, "You shouldn't be here, they'll come back." The woman's warning sent a chill straight through me. Her wrists were raw from the ropes, her face pale in the flickering glow of my lantern. I crouched down, cutting the bindings with my knife, my ears straining for any sound beyond the pounding of my heart. "Who will come back?" I whispered, but her eyes darted to the doorway as if even saying it aloud would summon them. The rope fell away, and she clutched my arm, trembling. "They take anyone who wanders in," she breathed, "drag them into the dark. No one ever returns." I helped her to her feet, but the house groaned around us, a floorboard snapping somewhere deeper in the shadows. My hand went to the lantern, raising it high. The air thickened, heavy with something unseen. A low whisper seemed to rise from the walls themselves, not words, but a sound like wind through hollow bones. The woman pressed closer, clutching at my sleeve. "It's too late," she said, her voice breaking. But I steadied her, tightening my grip on the knife. "Not tonight," I told her firmly. "You're getting out of here." And as we stepped back toward the doorway, the whisper grew louder, shifting into a chorus of voices, countless, broken, desperate, closing in from the darkness of the village. The voices swelled, echoing through the hollow streets like a tide rising around us. My lantern shook in my grip, its light flickering against the rotted walls. The woman clung to me, her breath shallow, every step she took weighted with terror. We stumbled into the street, and that was when I saw them, shadows peeling away from the corners of the houses, too tall, too thin, their movements jerky and wrong, like broken marionettes tugged by invisible strings. Empty sockets where eyes should have been glowed faintly, as though lit from within by the same fire that had consumed every soul before us. The woman buried her face against my shoulder, whispering, "They're the ones who were taken, the ones who never came back." My heart hammered, but fear sharpened into fury. I raised the lantern high, its light slicing through the thick night. For a moment the creatures recoiled, hissing like steam on cold iron. It gave us just enough space to run. "Don't stop," I commanded, pulling her with me down the crooked lane. My knife flashed as one of the shadows lunged, its clawed hand grazing my sleeve, but the steel cut through the dark like fire, tearing it apart into ash that scattered on the wind. The woman gasped, eyes wide with sudden hope. "You can hurt them. Then we fight our way out," I growled, dragging her forward as more shadows closed in, the cursed village howling with the voices of the damned. The shadows surged, a dozen at least, clawing out of the alleys, their forms shifting in the lantern glow as though made of smoke and bone. The woman stumbled beside me, but I held her tight, forcing us forward through the crooked street. Every house seemed to lean toward us, every shutter groaning as if the whole village itself wanted to drag us down. One of the creatures darted too close, its hand a tangle of long, blackened fingers. Instinct took over. I swung the lantern straight into its chest. Glass shattered, fire flared, and the thing erupted in a shriek that rattled the windows around us before dissolving into nothing but cinders. For a heartbeat, silence. Then the rest screamed. A sound so sharp it pierced bone. The woman clutched her ears, nearly collapsing. I hauled her up, teeth clenched, knife raised in my other hand. "Where's the edge of the village?" I shouted over the cacophony. She shook her head, eyes wide with tears. "There isn't one. People try to leave, they always come back to the square. It's a trap." My gut twisted, but there was no time to despair. We burst into what must have been the village center. A stone well stood in the middle, ancient and cracked, runes carved deep into its surface. And the shadows circled us, dozens now, their voices blending into a chant that shook the ground beneath my feet. The woman's hand gripped mine, desperate. "That's where it started," she cried, pointing at the well. "If you destroy it, maybe the curse breaks." The shadows drew closer, their hollow eyes burning brighter, as I raised my knife and stared into the abyss below. The chanting rose into a deafening roar, the air thick with ash and rot. The ground beneath the well trembled as though something alive writhed below it, straining to claw free. I tightened my grip on the knife, the steel slick with sweat, and pulled the woman behind me. The shadows circled, dozens of them, their faces flickering with echoes of the people they once were, mouths open in endless screams, hands twisted into claws. Every instinct screamed to run, but the well seemed to drag at me, pulling me closer with invisible threads. I raised the knife high, and for a heartbeat the creatures froze. The runes carved into the stone glowed faintly, pulsing like a heartbeat. The woman's voice broke through the cacophony, trembling but fierce. "Do it. Break it before they take us too." I drove the blade into the ancient stone. A crack split down the side of the well, light searing through the darkness. The shadows shrieked, their forms unraveling like smoke in the wind, but the ground convulsed beneath us. A force like a hurricane tore through the square, pulling everything toward the broken well. I threw my arms around the woman, shielding her as the light consumed the night. The screams of the cursed filled the air, then faded into silence. When I opened my eyes, the village was gone, only ruins remained, the houses nothing but charred skeletons, the air heavy with the smell of burnt earth. The woman clung to me, her body shaking, eyes wide with disbelief. "You did it," she whispered. "You broke the curse." I looked at the shattered stone, my knife still buried in its heart, and knew the truth. The curse was broken, but what had lived there wasn't gone. It was only waiting. The silence that followed was worse than the screams. The night pressed down heavy, as if the sky itself was holding its breath. The woman's grip on me tightened, and when I helped her to her feet, she swayed, her eyes still darting to the shadows that no longer moved. We left the ruined square, our steps echoing on the broken stones. The village looked different now, lifeless, yes, but stripped of the dark pulse that had filled it before. Windows hung empty like dead eyes, roofs sagged inward, and weeds clawed up through the cobbles. Whatever had lived here was gone, or hiding deeper. As we reached the crooked gate, the woman stopped. "You don't understand," she whispered. Her voice was raw, like every word cost her. It wasn't the village that was cursed. It was the well. The well called to people. It will call again. I turned to her, the lantern's last embers faintly glowing in my hand. "Then I'll be ready if it does." Her gaze lingered on me, filled with both gratitude and fear. The forest stretched beyond, quiet but uneasy. As though the earth itself remembered what had just been broken. We stepped beyond the gate together. Behind us, in the ruins, the shattered stones of the well gave off a faint hum. Barely audible. Barely alive. But enough to promise, the curse was not finished. The forest swallowed us quickly, the ruins of the village vanishing into the mist as if they had never existed. Each step away should have eased the weight on my chest, but instead the silence pressed heavier, like the trees themselves were listening. The woman clung to my arm, her breaths shallow, eyes flicking back over her shoulder every few moments. We walked until the path opened into a clearing lit only by the pale glow of the moon. There, she finally stopped, her hand gripping mine so tightly her knuckles went white. "You don't understand," she said again, her voice breaking. "It doesn't let go. The well, it marks those who leave." Before I could answer, I noticed it, a faint shimmer at the edge of the clearing, like heat rising off stone, though the air was cool. A whisper brushed against my ear, though the woman heard nothing. My stomach turned cold as I realized the sound was not behind me. It was inside. The woman's eyes widened, reading the change in my face. "It chose you, didn't it?" she breathed. I wanted to deny it, but even as I opened my mouth, the whisper curled again in my head, gentle, coaxing, promising. The same call that had lured travelers, farmers, and wanderers into the village for generations. I gripped the woman's hand tighter. "Then I'll fight it," I said through my teeth. But in the pit of my chest, I already knew the truth. The curse was not broken. It had simply found a new vessel. Her fingers trembled in mine, her eyes searching my face for hope I wasn't sure I could give. The whisper in my head grew clearer, no longer just a sound but words, cold and steady. "You opened the way. You belong to us now." I staggered, clutching my temple, the forest spinning. She grabbed my shoulders, shaking me. "Don't listen. That's how it takes hold, through your fear. You have to fight it." The clearing darkened, moonlight dimming as shadows bled upward from the ground, curling like smoke around my boots. The trees bent inward, their branches stretching like claws. I forced my breathing steady, raising my knife, though the steel felt heavy, as if unseen hands dragged it down. The woman pressed herself against me, her voice desperate. "It can't take both of us if we stay together. That's the only way, don't let go." I wrapped my arm around her, holding her close, grounding myself in the warmth of her trembling body. The whisper hissed again, furious now, "She cannot save you. No one can." And then the shadows lunged, twisting into human shapes, their hollow eyes blazing with the same cursed light I had seen in the village. They surged forward in silence, not as ghosts but as hunters. I lifted my blade, pulling the woman behind me. "Then let it try," I growled, teeth clenched, and charged into the dark. The first shadow struck like a storm wind, claws slicing through the air, but my knife cut across its chest, ripping it into ash. Another lunged, wrapping around me like smoke, whispering in my ear with the voice of someone I once knew. I staggered, nearly falling, but the woman's grip on my arm pulled me back, her terrified cry snapping me into focus. More came, pouring from the ground, their forms stretching, bending, their faces flickering with twisted memories, a farmer's hollow grin, a child's wide, empty eyes, a merchant's broken jaw. They weren't strangers, they were echoes of those the well had swallowed. Each one carried the weight of the curse, and each one wanted me to join them. I swung the blade again and again, sparks of light tearing the shadows apart, but for every one that fell, 2 more rose. My lungs burned, my arms ached, and still the voices pressed into my skull, "You belong to us. You are already ours." The woman clung to me, shouting something I could barely hear over the roar in my head. She pointed, past the writhing horde, at the far edge of the clearing, where a faint silver glow shimmered like dawn breaking through the night. "It's the way out," she screamed. With the last of my strength, I dragged her toward the light. The shadows closed in, slashing, tearing, their voices rising in a single, deafening wail. I raised the knife one final time, slashing a path forward. We stumbled into the glow, and the world tore apart. For a heartbeat, there was nothing but silence. Then I opened my eyes and saw we were standing at the edge of the forest. Behind us, the clearing was gone. No shadows, no whispers. Only still, quiet trees. The woman collapsed to her knees, sobbing in relief. I stood frozen, my chest heaving, the knife trembling in my hand. And then I heard it again. Not around me. Not behind me. But inside. A whisper. Soft. Patient. "You can leave the village, but the village will never leave you." The night was still, yet inside me the echo stirred like an ember refusing to die. The woman looked up, tears streaking her dirt-covered face, and whispered, "It followed you, didn't it?" I couldn't answer. My hand clenched tighter on the knife, though it felt heavier than steel should, as if the curse itself had seeped into the blade. Every breath carried that faint hum, that subtle pull back toward the ruins we had fled. She crawled closer, gripping my arm with desperate strength. "We can fight it. Together. You don't have to carry it alone." But even as she spoke, I saw something flicker in the corner of her eyes, a faint glow, silver and unnatural, like the cursed light I had seen in the villagers' sockets. My chest went cold. Perhaps it hadn't only chosen me. Perhaps saving her had come with its own price. The forest was silent, but I felt it watching, waiting. The curse hadn't been destroyed. It had merely changed form. And now it lived inside us both. The woman's voice trembled. "Tell me the truth, are we free?" I looked at her, at the faint light burning behind her pupils, and forced the lie past my lips. "Yes. We're free." But in the distance, beyond the dark trees, I could already hear the sound of the well. A low hum, steady as a heartbeat. Waiting for us to return. Her shoulders sagged with relief at my words, but the relief didn't reach her eyes. That silver flicker pulsed stronger for an instant, and then faded, like it was hiding from me. She leaned into me, trembling, and I wrapped an arm around her because it was all I could do. But in my chest the whisper grew louder, curling through my thoughts like smoke, "You can lie to her, but not to yourself." We walked in silence through the forest, each step taking us farther from the village and yet never shaking the weight of it. The trees loomed taller, their branches knitting so tightly overhead they blotted out the stars. The deeper we went, the more the path twisted, until I realized I no longer recognized the direction. The woman suddenly stopped, clutching my sleeve. "Do you hear it?" she asked. Her voice was thin, fearful. And I did. A faint drip of water, rhythmic and steady. My stomach clenched, because I knew that sound. The sound of the well. I turned slowly, lantern raised, and my blood froze. Behind us, between the trees, a shape had formed, the outline of crooked stone, glowing faintly as if the ruins had followed us. No, not followed. Moved. The curse hadn't been left behind. It had come with us. The woman's grip tightened until her nails dug into my skin. "We never left," she whispered. And in that moment, the forest itself seemed to breathe, every branch groaning like 1,000 voices welcoming us back. The sound of the well grew louder, each drip echoing like a hammer against my skull. I spun, desperate to find another path, but everywhere I looked the trees curved inward, twisted into shapes that resembled arms reaching toward us. The air grew damp, heavy, smelling of stone and stagnant water. The woman pressed against me, her voice shaking. "It's not the forest. It's them. They don't let go." And then I saw it, the crooked stones of the well standing right there in the clearing ahead, though moments ago it had been miles behind us. The runes glowed faintly again, throbbing like a living heart. My knife pulsed in my hand, the steel hot, humming in rhythm with that cursed beat. Whispers poured into me all at once, hundreds of voices, men and women, old and young, each overlapping. "You fought us. You freed her. Now you belong." I staggered forward, teeth clenched, fighting to keep my mind my own. The woman caught me, gripping my shoulders, her eyes burning with that same silver flicker I had seen before. "No," she cried, shaking me. "Don't listen. It wants you to surrender. That's all it needs." But even as she said it, I watched her pupils widen, the light consuming more of her gaze. She gasped and clutched her head, falling to her knees as if something inside was clawing to get out. The realization struck me like a blade, the curse hadn't just followed us. It was choosing. And if I didn't fight, it would take us both. I raised the knife, the hum in my skull becoming a scream. Somewhere deep in the well, something laughed. The laugh rose from the stones like a tremor, shaking through the ground and into my bones. The woman writhed at my feet, silver fire burning in her eyes as she clutched her head, whispering words that weren't her own. "Join us, join us." Her voice blended with the chorus until I could barely tell where hers ended and the others began. I staggered toward the well, every step dragging as though invisible chains wrapped around my ankles. The knife pulsed in my hand, glowing faintly now, feeding off the energy that threatened to consume me. The voices grew harsher, angrier. "Strike and you are ours. Refuse and you are nothing." The woman lifted her face to me, tears carving paths down her cheeks. "Daniel, help me." For a moment, just a moment, it was her voice. Then the silver surged and her lips curled into a hollow smile that wasn't hers at all. My chest clenched. If I faltered now, she would be lost forever. But if I gave in, I knew the well would take me too. I raised the knife high, heart pounding, and shouted over the cacophony, "If you want me, take me." But she goes free. The ground split, the runes blazing, the shadows bursting upward like a flood. The curse surged into me, filling my veins with ice, and I drove the blade down into the heart of the stone. The world erupted in light. A blast of force threw me backward, the woman with me, as the well collapsed inward with a roar like a dying beast. The shadows screamed, ripping apart into cinders, and then silence. I lay gasping in the dirt, the knife shattered beside me, the runes nothing but scorched scars on broken rock. The woman stirred, her eyes clear again, the silver gone. She gripped my hand, whispering in disbelief, "You did it." But deep in my chest, beneath the rush of victory, I felt it. A faint hum. A heartbeat that wasn't mine. The well was gone, but the curse had chosen its new vessel. And it was me. The hum inside me grew louder with every breath, not like a sound but like a second pulse beneath my skin. I squeezed the woman's hand, forcing a smile, though my veins already burned with the weight of it. If she noticed, she didn't say. Her tear-streaked face was lit with fragile hope, the kind I couldn't bear to shatter. We staggered from the ruins together, leaving the smoldering stones behind. The forest seemed calmer now, its branches no longer twisting, its silence less suffocating. To her, it looked like freedom. To me, it was a cage I carried in my chest. When we reached the edge of the valley, she collapsed against me, exhausted, whispering, "It's over. We can go home." I nodded, unable to answer, my jaw clenched so tight it hurt. Because even as the first rays of dawn touched the horizon, I heard them, faint whispers threading through my thoughts, gentle, patient, unrelenting. Not over. Never over. You are ours now. I looked down at her sleeping face, peaceful for the first time since I'd found her, and made my choice. If the curse lived in me, then I would carry it away from her, away from anyone else. I would fight it, hold it, chain it inside myself until my last breath. But as we walked out of the valley, I couldn't shake the truth coiled in the back of my mind like a snake: curses don't die. They only wait. And one day, when I falter, it will rise again, through me. Days passed. But the weight never lessened. At night, when she slept, I would sit awake staring into the dark, listening to the whispers crawl through my skull like worms in the earth. Sometimes they spoke in voices of the villagers I'd seen, sometimes in hers, soft and pleading, "Daniel, let go, it's easier if you let go." I never answered them. Not aloud. But inside, a war raged with every heartbeat. The curse wasn't just inside me, it was learning, bending, testing my will like a hunter circling prey. We reached the first town beyond the valley. People stared at us as we passed, two strangers caked in dirt and ash, eyes hollow from what we'd endured. They welcomed us with food, shelter, and questions, but I spoke little. She told them pieces of the truth: a cursed village, shadows, an escape against all odds. They gasped, horrified, grateful we survived. But when they looked at me, I saw their faces blur for an instant, flickering with hollow sockets and silver eyes. The curse showed me what it wanted. It wanted me to see them all as its next victims. That night, while she finally slept in a real bed, I stood outside under the stars, gripping the shattered remnants of the knife I had carried. The steel was cold, dead, but the hum inside me was alive. And as I stared into the darkness beyond the village, the whispers rose again, louder, clearer than before: "You broke the stone, Daniel. Now you are the well." I rose slowly, my breath ragged, trying to steady the storm inside me. Her hands rested on my shoulders, light, warm, real, and in that moment the whispers retreated, fading like a tide pulling back into the sea. I clung to that feeling, to her gaze filled with both fear and a quiet strength I no longer felt in myself. "I won't let it take me," I said softly, more for her than for me. She nodded, her fingers sliding into mine, gripping as though her touch alone could anchor me to the world. We stood together in the middle of the silent street, and for a moment everything seemed ordinary again, the warm glow of the lantern above us, the cool night breeze brushing against our faces, the distant bark of a dog. Small signs of life, reminders that the world outside the curse was still real. I knew the whispers hadn't gone, they were only waiting, patient and silent in the dark corners of my mind. But with her beside me, they didn't hold the same power. And that gave me hope, maybe as long as we walked together, the curse would never fully claim me. Dawn crept over the rooftops, washing the street in pale gold. She leaned against me, exhausted but unbroken, her hand still wrapped around mine as if she feared letting go. I looked at her and felt the weight in my chest ease, just slightly, as though the light itself was holding back the shadows. The whispers were still there, quiet and watchful, but they no longer drowned me. They were a burden I would carry, a fight I would wage every day. Yet in that fragile morning silence, with her beside me, I understood something. I wasn't lost. Not yet. I drew a breath, steady and full, and whispered to myself, as long as she walks with me, I am stronger than the curse. And though deep inside I knew the darkness would wait, patient and eternal, I also knew I would face it. Not alone. Never alone.